What if I told you the most powerful woman of her time died not in battle, not by conspiracy, but in silence? That behind the glittering mask of England's golden age lay a corpse rotting for weeks before anyone dared admit she was gone. This isn't a royal scandal. It's the haunting mystery of Elizabeth I's death, a tale of poison, plague, and a throne left bleeding in the shadows. In this documentary, you'll unravel the secrets of Elizabeth's final days, the hidden symptoms, the whispered suspects, and why, 400 years later, historians still fight over her true killer. If you crave dark palaces, political betrayal, and forensic riddles, press play. Because the end of Gloriana's reign was stranger than any fiction, and the truth, it's buried with her bones. Chapter 1. The Mask Cracks. Elizabeth's Final Days. The air in Richmond Palace hung thick with the scent of beeswax and decay. In her privy chamber, Elizabeth Tudor stood motionless before a silvered glass, her skeletal fingers tracing the reflection of a face that time had ravaged. The once vibrant monarch who had dazzled courts and commanded armies now existed as little more than a whisper of her former glory. For weeks, she had refused to eat, refused to sleep, refused to acknowledge the inevitable truth that her courtiers dared not speak aloud. The Virgin Queen was dying. Elizabeth's reign had spanned nearly half a century, a miraculous feat considering the dangers that had stalked her since birth. She had survived the executioner's block that claimed her mother, the suspicious death of a stepmother, and the murderous jealousy of her own sister. She had endured smallpox, Spanish invasion plots, and countless assassination attempts. Yet now, at 69 years old, her formidable will could no longer hold back the relentless march of time and decay. Her body, once celebrated in poetry and portraiture, had become a prison of pain. Swollen joints made movement agony, forcing the woman who had once danced 6 galliards in a row to shuffle like an old crone. Her famous teeth, blackened and rotten, left her unable to chew anything more substantial than bread soaked in wine. Most troubling were the ulcers lining her throat, angry red lesions that turned each swallow into torture. When her physicians approached with their lancets and potions, she drove them away with a glare that still carried the fire of command. "I'm not sick," she rasped, the defiance in her voice belying the weakness of her frame. This was no mere denial. Elizabeth had spent a lifetime crafting her image as the ageless Gloriana, the eternal Virgin Queen. She had whitened her face with poisonous ceruse, donned ever more elaborate gowns to distract from her aging form, and maintained the fiction of potential marriageability well into her 60s. To admit illness would be to shatter this carefully constructed illusion. To acknowledge what her mirror showed her daily, that time, the one enemy no monarch could command, was finally claiming its due. Beyond the royal apartments, England held its breath. The question of succession, so long deferred through clever politics and outright evasion, now loomed like an executioner's axe. For decades, Elizabeth had refused to name an heir, treating the subject as one might treat a sleeping dragon, best left undisturbed. Now, her silence threatened to plunge the kingdom into chaos. Robert Cecil, her diminutive but formidable Secretary of State, moved through the shadows of court like a spider at the center of a web. Coded letters flew north to James VI of Scotland, while courtiers placed quiet bets on who would rise and fall in the coming regime change. The Spanish ambassador reported to Madrid that the doctors despair of her health, while in the taverns of London, men spoke in hushed tones of the uncertain days ahead. By February of 1603, Elizabeth could no longer maintain the pretense of wellness. She took to her bed, though characteristically refused to lie down, instead remaining propped upright against a mountain of pillows, a queen even in pose. As the fever took hold, her mind began to wander through the corridors of memory. She spoke to phantoms her beloved Leicester, dead these 15 years, the traitorous Essex whose execution had left a wound that never healed. At times she clawed at her face as if to tear away the mask of age, her nails leaving angry red tracks in the ceruse-caked skin. The end, when it came, would be as carefully staged as any of her royal progresses. But in these final days, as the light faded from those famous dark eyes, Elizabeth Tudor faced the one opponent she could neither charm nor command. The woman who had defied kings and popes, who had turned her virginity into a weapon of state, now confronted mortality itself. And in that silent struggle, the fate of a nation hung in the balance. For Elizabeth's death would not be merely the passing of a monarch. It would mark the end of an age, the closing of a golden chapter in England's history. The countdown to chaos had begun. Chapter 2. The suspects: poison, plague, or broken heart. Not all murders leave a knife in the back. Some hide in a teacup, a perfume bottle, or even a portrait. Suspect 1. The poisoned mirror. Elizabeth's obsession with youth was lethal. To maintain her ghostly complexion, she slathered her face with Venetian ceruse, a makeup of white lead and vinegar. Over decades, the poison seeped into her blood. Did vanity kill the queen? Suspect 2. The plague's shadow. In 1603, London's streets reeked of death. The bubonic plague had returned, and Elizabeth's symptoms, fever, delirium, swollen lymph nodes, mirrored its grip. Had the Black Death crept into her bedchamber? Suspect 3. The Essex curse. 2 years earlier, Elizabeth had signed the death warrant of Robert Devereux, her beloved Earl of Essex. Witnesses claimed she never recovered from grief. Did a broken heart stop hers? But the darkest theory? Suspect 4. A silent coup. With James VI of Scotland waiting to inherit, some historians ask, did someone hurry Elizabeth toward the grave? Chapter 3. The autopsy of history, decoding the clues. No one examined Elizabeth's body, no toxicology reports, no deathbed confession, just fragments. The ring legend. A week before dying, Elizabeth allegedly tore a ring from her finger, a secret pledge to Mary. Was this a deathbed regret? The corpse's secret. Her coffin was so heavy workmen struggled to carry it. Had her body swollen from infection, or was it something else? The missing organs. Tudor embalmers removed hearts and bowels before burial. What if evidence vanished with them? Modern forensic teams have recreated her symptoms. The verdict? Lead poisoning, pneumonia, or strep throat, all plausible. But without her corpse, the truth rots with her. Chapter 4. The aftermath. A kingdom's nervous breakdown. Elizabeth died on March 24, 1603, but her death was hidden for 3 days, enough time to secure James's succession. When the news broke, London didn't mourn. It panicked. Shops closed. Churches overflowed. Rumors spread of a Spanish invasion or civil war. The Queen's body, left unattended for weeks, began to stink so badly the funeral was rushed. This was the real cost of Elizabeth's mystery, a nation unprepared to lose its mother. Chapter 5. The vanishing corpse, a royal cover-up. Death was only the beginning of the conspiracy. When Elizabeth finally released her last shuddering breath on March 24, 1603, an eerie silence fell over Richmond Palace. The Queen's body lay untouched for hours. No embalming, no prayers, no ceremonial washing. Courtiers tiptoed past the death chamber as if afraid to disturb something beyond mortal comprehension. Only when the first unmistakable stench of decay began seeping beneath the door did anyone dare intervene. The embalmers recoiled at what they found. Elizabeth's corpse, swollen with the gases of decomposition, had already begun to rupture. The lead coffin prepared for her proved too small. Her body had to be forced inside, the metal straining against its grotesque contents. By the time the funeral procession reached Westminster Abbey, the stench was so overpowering that mourners gagged behind their perfumed handkerchiefs. But why this shocking neglect? The whispers began before the coffin was sealed. Robert Cecil, Elizabeth's diminutive but ruthless chief minister, had spent those crucial hours burning documents in his private chambers. Letters vanished, diaries disappeared. Servants who had attended the Queen in her final days were suddenly reassigned to distant postings. Most damning of all, Elizabeth's personal physician, Dr. Roger Marbeck, retired abruptly to the countryside and never spoke of his royal patient again. The official explanation was simple chaos, a court unprepared for its monarch's death, but the timing was too convenient. For years, Cecil had been secretly corresponding with James VI of Scotland, carefully positioning himself as the architect of the succession. Yet Elizabeth, in her final months, had grown unpredictable, wavering on naming James her heir, even speaking wistfully of other candidates. Had Cecil, fearing she might change her mind with her dying breath, ensured she never got the chance. The final insult came in the Abbey itself. While Henry VIII's massive tomb dominated the choir, Elizabeth was given no monument at all, just a nameless motionless slab in the north aisle. For nearly a decade, visitors would ask guides, "Where lies the great Queen Elizabeth?" only to be met with shrugs. Not until 1606 did James I, perhaps feeling the weight of history's judgment, commission a modest effigy. Even then, it was placed not over her remains, but in a different chapel entirely. Was this mere oversight by a new regime eager to assert itself, or something more deliberate, a quiet attempt to diminish the cult of Gloriana that might threaten James's legitimacy? The truth may lie in Westminster's vaults, where Elizabeth's lead coffin still rests beneath the abbey floor. But to open it would be to unravel one of history's most enduring mysteries. Did Elizabeth Tudor die of natural causes, or was England's greatest queen helped into her grave? Elizabeth's death birthed a new era, the Stuart dynasty, colonial expansion, and Shakespeare's darkest plays. But it also left a warning that even the mightiest rulers are flesh and bone. If you crave more twisted histories, subscribe and ring the bell, because the past isn't dead. It's just waiting to be dug up. Remember, queens die, but secrets, they outlive us all.